Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. We have so many people joining today. It is completely overbooked. So if you are in, well done, because the numbers are going up. And Zoom only takes on this account 100 people, and we've had over 200 people register. So well done for getting in quick. Well done for being in fast. And thank you for joining me. So today I am running this free webinar for everybody who is going through a tough situation right now. If you are divorcing what I call a difficult person, then this is perfect for you, okay? Because there is so much that is involved when you do divorce a difficult person. Maybe some of you didn't realize it when you were in the relationship. Maybe you did. Maybe some of you are out and still not able to let go and move on. Maybe some of you are still trying to recover from what you went through. So I wanted to put this together to give you lots and lots of information that's going to help you. Okay, there's going to be lots of takeaways from this webinar. There's going to be lots and lots and lots of information. So do grab a pen, do grab a piece of paper, because I'm going to be giving you things that you can implement straight away to help you cope better with whatever you're going through right now. Okay. Now, I am presenting this today in conjunction with the Dash charity. Now, the Dash charity are an incredible charity. Dash stands for Domestic Abuse Stops Here. Okay, they are a phenomenal charity and they do some amazing work, as do many, many domestic abuse charities in the UK. You know, it may not feel like it at times, but actually the UK is leading the way with domestic abuse support and domestic abuse charities. So that is something that, you know, that our country, the UK, if you're listening in the UK, we are doing pretty well at. So there is that support there for you. And Dash is an incredible charity. I'm lucky to be the patron of the Dash charity. They support men, women and children around the country. They have a support line that you can phone in if you need any help. And they have refuges as well, and they take people from all over the UK. The team that are phenomenal. They work super, super hard. And if you've ever, I don't know if anyone ever has reached out to a domestic abuse charity. If you have, then just put a yes or a Y in the chat box so I can see, because it's really, really interesting just how passionate and how kind and how warm-hearted these people are. And when they speak the same language as you, oh my gosh, it makes such a difference. It makes such a difference to talk to someone who really gets what you're going through, doesn't it? It really, really does. So thank you for joining me for this. I can see lots of people streaming and lots of people again on Instagram too. So that's great. So we're going to get started. I've got some slides I want to share with you, and I'm going to move quite quickly through it. And then at the end, I'm going to take questions. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat box. If I see them as I'm going through, of course, I will jump in and answer them. But I will stay at the end to answer all your questions. So if you do have a question, do pop it down as we go, as it comes up. Okie dokie. Right. I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can get stuck in. So I hope you've got a pen and some paper and you're ready. Okay. So how to divorce an abusive partner and recover from a toxic relationship. Okay, so the stats are pretty hard hitting, guys. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 5 children, and 1 in 6 men experience domestic abuse. Okay, now you can see here that, you know, it happens to men and women and obviously children. So it is, you know, for men and women as well. I know we've got some men listening in today as well. So it is for both genders, although, you know, there is a predominance, it is higher for women. But as you can see here, 1 in 6 men also experience domestic abuse. And there have been some TV programs actually in the UK very recently, actually last week, I think, about men who've been abused. So it is a topical subject right now, and rightly so. A woman dies every 3 days in the UK as a direct result of domestic abuse. Every 3 days, a woman is dying in the UK because of domestic abuse. And on average, it takes 5 years for someone to leave an abusive relationship. Now, this is something that your friends may not really understand or appreciate, right? Because I tell you why, because for them, so a lot of people, and let me know, put in the chat box if you've been told this, well, why didn't you just get out? Or why don't you just leave? And we're going to come on to why people stay. But this stat, 5 years, can be quite shocking. 30 women a day try to commit suicide as a direct result of domestic abuse. I know that people on here all have been in that situation, and I see it all the time, as do the Dash charity. It is 30 women a day, guys. This is super high, and you know, we really need to be educating as many people as possible on what this is, so you can reach out, because you may not know that your friend is going through this. You know, most of us know somebody, even if it hasn't happened to us, most of us will know somebody who is going through it right now. And that's the thing. Quite often you may not know, you may not recognize the signs, but after today, hopefully you will. Now, of course, if you are in immediate danger and you're tuning into this, wherever you are, please call your police emergency services. You know, this is really important, that you don't put yourself at risk and that you stay safe. And the only way to do that may be to call the police. Okay, so what is abuse? Well, let's just talk about abuse. Okay, abuse is not normal. And I know when you're in an abusive relationship, we quite often will normalize abuse. We will minimize it as well. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but it's not normal and it's not acceptable. Okay. Now, quite often I refer to abusive people, perpetrators, as difficult people. Now, when I say that, okay, it is not in any way to diminish what they've done, or the significance or the horror of what they're doing, or the cruelty, or to in any way say that it is acceptable, because it is not. But as a coach, dialing down the negative intensity from certain words like abuse and perpetrator can help you to stay a little bit more stable and not trigger you. So also, I think that calling them difficult people, so it takes away significance from them, right? We take away significance, but actually that's what they really want, isn't it? So actually taking the significance away and dialing them down, making them as insignificant as possible, also helps. So you might hear me referring to them as difficult people, but as I said, that is in no way to dial down the impact or the significance of what the abuse is. So it is important to get clarity on abuse. Okay, if you are in an abusive relationship, it's important to understand what abuse is, how it works, how we get into those relationships. And I'm going to cover a lot of that today. And also to know that it's not your fault. Okay, it is not your fault, and you will be okay. You know, it may not seem like it right now, but I promise you, you are not alone. Just by the volume of people that registered today to be on this event, you are not alone, okay? And you will be okay. During this presentation, you might get some light bulb moments. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, suddenly you're going to go, aha, you know, those aha moments where you think, gosh, okay, I'm struggling here, you know, or I get that, this means this resonates with me, and that's okay. So do bear that in mind, that you may get some light bulb moments. So that's why I asked you to get a pen and a piece of paper so you can really capture what we're doing today. And it's about taking small steps every day as we go through. Okay. I'm just reading some of the questions here. Okay, we're going to cover some of the questions, so I'm going to come back to those in a minute. So what is abuse? Well, currently the government guidelines for that is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behavior, violence or abuse, and that could be psychological, physical, sexual, financial or emotional, between those aged 16 or over, who are or have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. So that's the current government guidelines. So what are the different types of domestic abuse? well, obviously we have physical abuse, and sometimes those signs are easier to spot, right? Because someone actually has a somebody actually has a bruise or a cut or a broken bone, or is injured in some way. Sexual abuse, quite often that is a way to control, either making you do things you don't want to do or are uncomfortable with, or really push your boundaries, or removing sex completely to make you feel unattractive or rejected and unloved. Abuse can happen through your children, and that can often be whilst you're living in the same home, but also post-separation abuse, because after you separate, the myth is that the abuse will stop. Now, for any of those listening or watching who have been through an abusive relationship, you will know and be very familiar that actually coming out of abusive relationship increase your risk, first of all, because 30% of domestic homicides in the UK happen during those first 3 months of separation from your abuser, purely because they are losing control over you during those months. So what they're trying to do is frantically get that abuse back and that control back over you. So sometimes the only way to maintain that is to use the children. We'll talk a little bit about that as well later. Coercive controlling behavior. So we will come on and talk a bit about that. Economic abuse, maybe running up debts in your name or controlling what you spend, or just being very secretive about money and finances, not letting you have access to money, and psychological abuse. So again, there are lots of different types of abuse. We're not just focusing on physical abuse here, we're talking about all of these. So lots of people will say, well, how do you get into that kind of relationship? Well, if you knew what they were going to be like on day one, or they showed up on day one as they are later on in the relationship, you tell them to sing the hook, okay? So it doesn't happen on day one. What happens is what's known as love bombing. So love bombing is when you are made to feel $1 million, like you are the best thing ever, like they love you so much. They might spoil you with expensive gifts or taking you out for dinners or maybe holidays, romantic getaways. So promises that you're going to be taken care of forever, that life is just wonderful, you're going to have a great time, they're going to love you forever, you're their soulmate, they've fallen in love with you, all happening pretty quickly, but it feels amazing. So even though it may feel a little bit too good to be true, quite often just the whole emotion of it and the fairy tale of it all gets you really hooked in. And that's where you fall in love, by the way. At this point, we're falling in love here with this person who they're showing up in this beginning part of the relationship. That's where we just fall head over heels in love, and we are hooked in then to this person because they are showing us the very best side of them, or a perception of them that they want us to believe is real. Now, to get into these kinds of relationships, you have to be highly empathetic, okay? Because if you are at all not empathetic or selfish or self-centered, you wouldn't tolerate when the bad behavior starts to show up, okay? We've all got friends who, if someone doesn't show up when they're meant to, it's like, right, that's it, they're out, I'm off. And you're like, oh, I'll give them a chance. Maybe they've had a bad day, right? Maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're struggling. But you know, to sustain an abusive relationship, you kind of have to be highly empathetic, very understanding, and kind of a fixer. Like, oh, don't worry, I know you're having a bad day, or I can make it better for you. Those kind of things, right? Does it sound familiar to you guys? I'm sure it does to many of you. The important thing to remember is it is not your fault. It is not your fault, okay? It really isn't. We're going to talk about that as well. So is it love? Well, for you, yeah, you're hooked in. But remember, you're hooked in to that first impression of them when they're being so wonderful and love bombing you and promising you everything. Okay, promising you the world. You're going to be looked after. You've got your soulmate. Everything's going to be fantastic. So it really is fairy tale romance, sort of what you see in the movies kind of thing. But for them, is it love? And a lot of my clients say, sorry, but did they ever love me? Did they ever love me? Now, how they work is that they need that adulation and adoration. Okay, they need that. I'm going to come on a little bit to that, but so they need that. So they are grateful to you for giving them that supply, which they need, like their oxygen mask, right? They need that to breathe, to survive. So their love for you is kind of like a gratitude for that continued supply. Because they lack empathy, they don't love in the way that you would love, but they are capable of mimicking what love looks like. So it can feel like that, for sure. So how does the control grow? Well, as I said before, it doesn't happen on day one necessarily. It's usually over a slow period of time that your boundaries are eroded. Now, what do I mean by boundaries? What I mean is, what is acceptable behavior for you? When you go into a relationship, you will have, imagine like a brick wall that surrounds you, made up of different bricks. And that represents what is acceptable behavior for you. Now, maybe they call you a name and a brick is taken out of your wall. Maybe they're unreliable. Maybe they do something that's unkind. Maybe they are rude or cruel to you. Slowly, that abuse starts to creep in. But that's one brick at a time removed. And because you're not saying, stop, what are you doing? That's not okay. Because you're saying, oh, I'm having a bad day, or I want to avoid conflict here. I don't want to get involved in this. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. I know they're having a tough time. Or I'll suck it up. Don't worry, I'll take it on board. Does that all sound familiar? Yeah, absolutely. So that's how the bricks come out, and your boundaries of what is acceptable behavior become eroded. Because once those bricks are out, it's very, very hard to put them back in. But again, it's not your fault, but this is how the control grows over a period of time. So how do you know if your partner has an abusive personality? Look, I'm a coach, okay, and I'm very big on staying in my lane, okay? I'm not an ologist or an iatrist or an analyst of any type, okay? So I don't go around diagnosing your partners, and I don't know them. And also, for those that are competent at doing that job, who are the psychiatrists and the other professions that do that for work, it can take a very, very long time. It can take months and months of study and assessment of that person. So, yeah, I'm not here to diagnose your ex or your current partner, okay? It's not what my job is, but my job is to empower you to spot the signs of abuse, okay? It's super, super important. So how do you know if your partner has an abusive personality? There are going to be some classic textbook traits that I want you to be able to spot, okay? And this is going to enable you to stop repeating the patterns that maybe you've done before of getting into toxic relationships, which is really, really important, guys. So they're going to have a sense of self-importance. It might also seem like they're living in a fantasy world. They have a constant need for praise and attention, that adulation I was talking about earlier, and a sense of entitlement, like they are just owed whatever, you know. They also have no shame or guilt, so they can do things and then carry on. They're not embarrassed by their actions most of the time. They have a lack of empathy, a real lack of empathy as well. And God complex, again, going along a bit with that sense of self-importance. They are super convincing liars. A lot of them are con artists. They never accept blame or the consequence of their actions. It's always somebody else's fault. Bullying, belittling, and intimidating others is their modus operandi. That's what they do. Mirroring is really interesting because mirroring is a reflection of their behavior, but they put it on you. Does that sound familiar? So they will accuse you of something that they're actually doing themselves. Like, why are you so mean? Why are you so unreliable? Why are you being so difficult? When actually it's them that's doing it, okay? So they will often, because they don't accept blame, they just put it on you, which actually is super confusing, right? Because you're there going, well, hang on a second. If you're saying that, then what am I doing that is confusing? Or what am I doing that is being mean? And so you start questioning, because you're logical and rational and empathetic, you're looking for your part in this, which is very, very confusing. And it's called gaslighting when it's so confusing that at some point they could tell you your name was something else and you'd even believe them. I mean, that can be that debilitating. They're all or nothing personalities. So quite often they're addicts as well. So alcohol, drugs, maybe if they're going to get fit, they'll be in the gym all the time, or they're overeating and they're eating junk. It's one or the other. It's very sort of yo-yo up and down. And very charming. So they might look like the life and soul of the party. Your friends and family and people you work with might think they are just amazing, but behind closed doors, that's not the case. So quite often it's a double life. And quite often you're the only one that's going to see that other side. So what are the signs that you are in an abusive relationship? Well, walking on eggshells is one, which basically means that you are on edge. So as soon as you hear the door go and your ex is home, you're on edge because you're like, what mood are they going to show up in right now? Are they in a good mood? Are they in a bad mood? To be honest, even if they're in a good mood, it can just take a heartbeat for something to explode. The gaslighting we've already talked about. There's a lot of lying. The lying and the gaslighting slowly erodes your confidence and self-esteem, which again keeps you stuck in that relationship, right? Because you lack the confidence to leave and you think it's your fault a lot of the time, and it's not. So it increases your self-doubt. They quite often will isolate you from friends and family and your support team. They might say things like, well, I'm the man in your life now, you don't need those friends, or you don't need to be so close to your dad. Or they might say, oh, you know what, I'm a bit tired. Do we have to go and see your friends this weekend? Like, can we just not go? And so you're like, oh, okay, right, we won't go this week. And then the next week, it's like, oh, I'm still feeling a bit tired. And in the end, you don't want to put them out. So you just distance yourself from those friends. A double life again, guys. Behind closed doors, things are very, very different than the perception to other people externally. And you won't want people to know either. In a lot of cases, you'll try to be covering up for them, which again perpetuates this whole cycle. So you start to lose your personal freedom. I had a client the other day who wasn't even allowed to go and get her nails done. She used to do that a lot. Even when she was in the nail salon, he'd be calling her, where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? Come on, I need you back here, because they used to work together. Financial control, again, is very, very common. Now, these things that you recognize, guys, if they are, just drop me a thumbs up in the chat box or on Instagram if you're listening to this live on Instagram. I'm really interested to see where you guys are at and if this is resonating with you. Emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. I mean, you're going to be spotting those signs, but it's interesting because when you're in it, again, it's very easy to normalize it and believe that it's your fault. So why do we stay? Well, yeah, we stay because we understand, right? We don't want to make things any worse, and you want to make it better for your partner. You're in the relationship, so you want to make it better for them. And you can appreciate their point of view. I mean, quite often with the gaslighting, it's interesting because there is a grain of truth in there somewhere. Okay, a tiny, teeny one, but there usually is one tiny, teeny grain of truth somewhere in there. Like, you were at that place, but that's it. The rest of it didn't play out as they say it did. So you kind of think, well, maybe they got it wrong because they know this is true and you accept that. So maybe they're confused. But actually, they're not confused. It's part of their classic tactic, their sort of textbook behavior. Sometimes we can just think, well, they're having a bad day. That's okay. Everyone has a bad day. Or you think it's up to you to fix it and you can take it on. And that's what being a good partner is all about, right? You want to help them and support them because you love them. So these are key reasons why we stay. Now, the hamster wheel abuse cycle, it's kind of cute, the hamster, right? But this is not a cute cycle. Basically, how does this happen? Because it's recurring and it keeps repeating itself. So we have the build-up of tension. So maybe your ex comes in and you can feel there's something going on, something bubbling, and you can just pick up on that. Maybe they're tapping their foot a lot, or they're just twitchy, or they're just not talking to you, or there's just a look in their eye that you recognize. Okay, so there's that slow build-up of tension. This can be over a long period of time, a couple of days, or it can just be minutes or moments. And then the abusive incident happens, whether it's some controlling behavior, an emotional outburst, a violent attack, whatever it is. And then the next stage. Now, this is where you start to pull away, understandably, because you are hurt, you might be scared, and the abuser realizes that you are pulling away from them. So what they need to do then is apologize and make excuses. They might blame you, might say, well, it was your fault really because you didn't get me dinner ready on time, or well, you were wearing that and I didn't like that, or I heard from somebody that you've done this. They might put the blame on you, it's very common, but they will apologize. And sometimes they say, oh, I'm really sorry. They might cry, they might be really upset, they might be very dramatic about their apology, they might beg for forgiveness so that they reel you back in. Okay. And then maybe within minutes, it's all forgotten. Or maybe the next morning, it's all forgotten. Now, what happens then is that the relief of it being over and done is so big that you don't want to bring it up. You don't want to cause any more problems. You think, okay, well, maybe we're back on that even keel and they're being that nice person I fell in love with again now. So I can just relax. It's all done. It's all over with. Hopefully it won't happen again. They've said it won't. So let's just get on with things. So you see how it escalates and then it gets really bad, horrific, but then you'll reel back in again. As soon as you start to drift away, you'll pull back in close and then it goes again and then it goes again. And this is the ongoing hamster wheel abuse cycle, which is why we stay in these relationships, because it's so hard to jump out because it gets good again. And that's what we want. That's what we fell in love with, right? So how do you deal with an abusive ex? Well, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you're in a game. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like the term being in a game. I don't like it, but it's just a fact. And they are playing games, not just with you, but with everybody in their life. Okay, so if you don't step up and appreciate that you are in a game, then you're just going to be moved like a pawn on a chessboard. You're just going to be moved around. And that's why you can feel battered and bruised emotionally and physically in some cases here. But it's about actually taking your power back. And that's what I want to help you do. Okay, I want you to take your power back by getting that clarity and understanding. You take your power back. So there are 7 steps to mastering the game. Okay, you have to master the game and you have to learn the rules of the game and then be 2 steps ahead. Okay, now does that take away all the pain? No, of course it doesn't. Unfortunately, if there was a magic wand to do that, then that would be incredible. And I would gladly give that to you. However, there isn't. But to help you be stronger, to help you cope better, then mastering the steps of the game is really important. So number 1, know what you're dealing with. So just understanding what abuse is key. Taking off your rose-tinted glasses to understand that your ex is not who they show up as. When they're that amazing person, that's who you fell in love with, right? But then the behavior comes in, the bad behavior. And that is completely out of context with this person you fell in love with and everything was wonderful and they were love bombing you, right? But then their behavior kicks in again and it's down here and it's horrendous, but you're still in love with them. So you're stuck into that groove. It's about taking off those rose-tinted glasses and realizing they are not that person, okay? And then taking notice of your triggers. What triggers these situations? What triggers you? You might be out of that relationship now and coming through the breakup or the divorce, but you're still getting triggered by your ex. That's totally normal, okay? You are wired and you have been trained in a certain way by your ex. So understanding what those triggers might be, what happens just before you get upset, and understanding that so we can go back in and help you put a plan together around that to not be as vulnerable. Also setting realistic expectations of your ex. You know, if you are forever hoping that your ex is going to come in up here and you think, okay, well, we've got maybe a meeting or a handover. Let's hope that they're going to be here and it's all going to go well. But the reality is they come in down here, then what's this gap, guys? And the gap between where your expectations are and the reality of where your ex will consistently show up is hurt, disappointment, and pain for you over and over again. So setting realistic expectations means shifting them to the floor in a lot of cases. Taking back your control. So understanding that this is where you're at and appreciating it, and that you have to control the things that you can control. You can't control your ex. You can't control what they are doing or what they're going to say or even do next. And again, it's about learning to trust yourself again by tuning into your gut instinct. A lot of the time we tune out from that, and turning the focus away from them, which can be very difficult because quite often we get quite obsessive about our exes if they are being abusive, because it's all consuming and you just don't know when it's coming at you next, especially with the divorce process. So enabling yourself to have some time for you and focus on you and what's important to you will help to tip that balance. So how do you stay strong during your divorce? Well, unfortunately, a leopard won't change its spots. It just won't. Okay. And your ex isn't going to change either. So they are going to continue to show up with all those traits that we've already discussed. So they're going to follow their rules of being obstructive, difficult, misleading, confusing, stating untruths with chilling certainty. Do you know what I mean? I don't recognize that. Manipulating and bullying. So we're not talking about people here who are, if you're going through a divorce and your ex is being difficult because they want the piano and you want something else and you're arguing about it. That is not an abusive relationship. Okay. That is conflict. That is a difficult, any divorce you can have heated moments. Okay. But the difference when you are divorcing an abusive person is that they are on a mission to crush you. They want to punish you and they want to make you suffer. Okay. There is no hope for a fair outcome on their side. That's not what they're aiming for. They just want to annihilate you. It's tough, isn't it? It's tough to hear, but this is true. And I know it's resonating with many of you. So common tactics going through a divorce of an abusive ex. So common tactics of toxic personalities include telling you don't need a lawyer. So you're not going to get that support or even the ability to understand what is legally yours. Okay. It really upsets me when people say, oh, she's taking me to the cleaners and things like that, because you know what? There's a law in every country for what you are legally entitled to, and going for what you are legally entitled to is your right. Okay. They don't say, oh, well, he or she's going for everything. They're trying to take everything. You don't say, well, you're stealing from me because you don't want to give me what's rightfully mine. You're a thief. It's just sometimes the way that it's portrayed is very unfair, I think. Also making crazily low or ridiculous, unfair offers. Classic technique will be not to provide financial clarity. If you're going through a divorce process, you have to provide your bank statements to your Form E and all the other things that go along with that. And again, I'm not a lawyer or a financial advisor, so I don't give that advice, but not providing financial clarity might mean that they're sending through spreadsheets that aren't formatted, or they're out of date, or that all the information comes through, but it's all over the place. So it's just totally confusing, or they don't disclose it, or they're too late to disclose it. And they leave it to the very last minute is often a tactic that I know a lot of my clients have seen. Obfuscating the process by appearing to be compliant, but then sending confusing things with missing information. And again, perpetrators, difficult people, then turn to their legal professionals to become the mouthpiece for their abuse. Now, of course, there are some really incredible lawyers out there who will not tolerate that and will not become the mouthpiece of abuse. But unfortunately, there are some, if not many, that I have come across with my coaching clinic who seem to think it's okay to send very intimidating, bullying, horrific, threatening letters to clients of mine. And it just really is, I don't really get it, actually. I don't know how they sleep at night. And in most other professions, you'd probably be struck off for sending such an intimidating, threatening letter. But in the family courts, especially in the UK here, it seems to be the norm, like to have a tactic to try and intimidate and bully the other side so they give up. Now, the challenge is family courts may call it high conflict, but any rational, logical couple going through a breakup do not want to end up in court. They just don't. They just don't want to, because they know it's going to be very expensive. It's a very unpleasant process, and really the only people that gain from it are the legal professionals. So most people will want to keep it out of court. It's only when you're in a abusive, so high conflict, So it makes it appear there's 50-50, doesn't it? But it's not. Does anyone get what I'm saying here? There are people out there listening to this right now, or maybe you really understand what I'm saying, because I see it every single day in my clinic, that high conflict is really another term for abusive. But if it's an abusive relationship, it's not 50-50 conflict, is it? It's 100% 0 or 99% 1. You know, it's something that's being thrown at you, and you have nothing other to do than to defend yourself against it. And of course, another tactic is using the children to continue the post-separation abuse. So we talked a little bit about this. So expectations versus reality. If you can expect for the worst and prepare for that, then you are going to do yourself such a service, because you're going to be stronger. You are not going to be battered by the surprise element that they're letting you down. So again, shifting those expectations down. I mean, I'm talking to the floor level, guys. I'm talking put them as low as you possibly can, because anything above that is a bonus. So practical essentials to preserve your peace of mind as you're going through this breakup, going through the divorce, and moving on with your life. Okay. First of all, establish your breakup support team. Now, these are people around you that are going to care about you, love you, make you feel good about yourself. Okay. You might also want to get your legal advisor in there, maybe a financial advisor, somebody to exercise with and get you out the house and enjoy what is now good weather here in the UK. I don't know where everybody is in the world who's listening right now, but you know, getting out and about, having an exercise buddy also will help, as well as a really awesome coach. Okay. Get clear on your boundaries. Again, this is a chance now to redefine what your boundaries are for understanding what is acceptable behavior for you now moving forward. Okay. Please don't share any personal information with your ex. Okay. Not how you're feeling, not how you slept last night, not who you're seeing or dating or who you're talking to, nothing. Okay. Keep it on top level. I have a technique called functionally friendly, which is all about just keeping everything surface level, because anything you give them can and usually will be used against you in some way. Okay, so just keep all your personal information to yourself. During the divorce process, I think it's a really good idea if you can set up a separate email address. So what do I mean by that? I mean a separate email address, like a, I don't know, almost like a junk folder almost, so that all your correspondence is going into one email address. It's not coming in to interrupt you during the day. Okay, because that's tough when you're sort of sitting there and it's at work and then suddenly these emails are flying in and throwing you off kilter. So you then know that maybe at a certain time of day when you've got a cup of tea and you're sitting down, or you've got one of your friends on speed dial, you can then check that email box so you're not getting bombarded all the time. Another really good tip, guys, is not to use your ex's full name. Interestingly, names carry so much emotion that just hearing that name will just send shivers down your spine, right? We don't want to do that. So shrink their name down to the first initial, okay? And not a caps, not, you know, big caps. It's teeny weeny little. So if it's Robert or Rachel, it's a teeny R, okay? So whether you're typing, whether you're talking, it's a teeny weeny R, okay? And I would, again, inform your legal professionals and your friends and your family that they're just going to refer to your ex as that from now on, because again, it shrinks the significance. Do keep a diary, especially of any abusive incidents, because you may need that as evidence. Try and take the emotion out of your divorce and treat it like a job. Please do contact your local domestic abuse charity. Wherever you are, if you just type in local abuse charity to where you are living, where you are right now, then you will find the local support. And just having faith that this will end, because it will end. It will. You may not know how at this stage, but it will. And it's just about having that faith, even though you don't know how. So self-care to keep you sane, because keeping yourself sane is really important, right? We need to keep you sane. So have regular timeouts from thinking about your case. Okay, almost imagine you've got a little box in your head you can lock these thoughts away in, and just say, right, I'm going to give myself permission to have an hour off. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to watch a box set, or I'm going to meet up with a friend, or I'm just going to meditate or have a bath and a glass of wine, or whatever your thing might be. but taking regular timeouts is really important to keep you healthy. You can always come back to it, okay? It's not going to change, and worrying about things you can't change as well will just perpetuate this bad feeling. So taking your control back and allowing yourself some space is a really positive thing to do. I have a technique called mind movies, which is if you go on and do some more work with me, you'll find out how to use that, but that can actually really help you prepare for if you're having to see your ex again, you know, or you have to meet up with your ex and their new partner, things like that, that you're worried about, or going to court with them, anything like that. This can really help you with that process. Moving your body, you know, getting outside, getting some exercise, even if it's just a walk, a brisk walk around the block, just try and keep that physical exercise going as much as you can, because that will strengthen your body and give you a boost. I think a lot of my clients find that they just sit around in tracksuits and, you know, eat junk food when they're going through this. Now, or don't eat at all. Okay, if this is resonating with you, please try and keep your personal standards high. Like, force yourself to get up and have a shower and put on some clothes. At least, you know, once a week, you know, dress up a little bit smarter, put some makeup on, wash your hair, those kind of things. Try not to run away from the emotions. It is okay to cry, but if you're getting stuck there, then please do ask for help. Avoid extremes like drinking too much. Hey, a glass of wine, okay, that's going to take the edge off. I get that. That's obviously okay. But if you've noticed that you've gone from a glass of wine to, say, a bottle of wine a night, that's really going to impact your mental state anyway the next day, which is going to reduce your ability to cope with these things. Again, taking time out to enjoy yourself, even if it's just going for a nice walk, making time for those things to give you that glimmer of light and hope in this process. Limiting who you tell your story to, again, is important, because every time you tell your story, you are reliving the pain over and over again. Okay, your body knows that the story, and it will just remember, oh my goodness, yeah, this story is really painful, and I feel it here, it makes me feel sick, I can't eat, I cry. And so every time you tell it, you're getting hooked back into that. Okay, so it's about stopping telling that. But again, if you go on and work with me, I'll show you how you can do that, because you can't just stop something without replacing it with something more positive. And again, please do ask for help. There is free help out there. I have a free guide on my website. I also you can ask your GP for help, and you can ask your domestic abuse charity, your local one, for help as well. So there are lots and lots of ways to get help. Another way you can help yourself, because I think a lot of this is a journey now. You know, we all go through really tough times, and I'm a believer that everything happens for a reason and serves a purpose, even though it can be really hard to see what that purpose is in that moment, right? So it's about understanding that you can take control. Okay, we all have the remote control to our brain, and those of you that have worked with me in the past will know I'm big on this. Like, we control how we feel. No matter what someone's doing to us, we can help ourselves to come out of this. And this is a really good time now, because you have a choice. You can either go down the path of letting this define you and drag it forward into the future, or you can step up and make some changes that are going to empower you to start to build those muscles of self-reliance and confidence and self-esteem, so that you can move forward and create a life you're truly excited and happy to live. Now, I know for some of you that might seem like a bit far off right now, but it all starts with those small steps that we talked about right at the beginning of this. One of them is self-reliance. It's learning to trust yourself and your gut instinct again. Now, gut instinct is one of the things that disappears, doesn't it, during an abusive, toxic relationship. We stop listening. Now, your gut instinct is kind of like the burglar alarm for your body. Okay, so something will happen and your instinct will be going, this doesn't feel right. This does not feel right. And it will be letting you know, right? Does it sound familiar? But when you're in a toxic relationship, or when you've been in one, quite often you logically override it. So you'll be going, oh yeah, but maybe that's not right. Or maybe I'm just being too sensitive. Or maybe I should just shut up about this right now and just get on with things. So even though your alarm bells are ringing, your entire burglar alarm system is just going off, you are suppressing it. So we need to tune back into that now, because this is your self-protection mechanism. Okay, I want you to learn to hone your radar for picking up on signs of abuse and abusive people around you. Okay, and to start with, we need to learn to tap into our own gut instinct, our intuition, which is going to tell us, okay, I know it's hard to trust other people when you've come out of a toxic relationship, not only future romantic partners, but also other people, friends, and sometimes family, because you've been let down and betrayed so badly. But the thing is, it's not about us giving away our trust, okay? It's not about you putting your blind faith in somebody else. And this is your body's way of protecting you, not getting hurt again. So it's a normal reaction not to want to trust, by the way. It's totally normal. But it's not about giving your trust away. It is about you learning to trust yourself, that you now have honed your radar for abuse so that you're going to pick up on it. And one of the first ways of doing that is to learn to trust your instinct, so that when your gut instinct is going, this doesn't feel right, this isn't comfortable, this isn't right, I don't think this is acceptable, you are going, yeah, I'm going to listen and I'm going to take some action. So how can you build your self-reliance? I think self-reliance is really important, because quite often we become very dependent on our exes and we think we can't survive without them. So building your self-reliance will help you along that journey. So first of all, be kind to yourself, okay? Talk less about things that are going on in your life and keep yourself to yourself a little bit when it comes to that personal side and that story. I know some friends will expect the next update. It's almost like being in EastEnders, right? Or some sort of horror show that just never seems to end. And they are being good friends by saying, well, are you okay? What's happening now? But actually, if you can swap that for a more empowering story about things that you're doing that are making you feel good, or things that you've got coming up in the future, then they can still help you and help you along your way and be good friends, but you're not having to tell your story over and over again. Now, curbing your neediness, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but we do become very vulnerable and sometimes clingy after a relationship to people that do care about us. So it's about learning to rely on yourself, and instead of running to other people for answers, ask yourself first. Okay, just ask yourself first, well, what would I do? I'm going to pick the phone up and ask my friend anyway, but before I do, in this situation, what would I do? What would make me feel better right now? What could I do to make this a little bit better, or to cheer myself up just a tiny bit right now? So then you can start to build that self-reliance muscle, which helps you approve of yourself and boost that self-confidence again. So it's important, again, to learn to rely on you, especially not on your ex. So having a team of people around you that can do some of those things you don't feel comfortable doing yet. But actually learning to do some of those things will be a good confidence boost for you too. So there's another step in this recovery, because our body holds a lot of trauma, okay? So you can be going through this and managing okay, almost like a swan, right? Maybe because you've got kids and you've got a job, you seem to be coping super well. But underneath, you're like paddling like crazy. So what can you do? Time is a great healer. I mean, that saying is great, but there are so many things you can do to speed up that process and empower yourself to take your control back and start feeling better now. Now, obviously, there is specialist coaching, which is what I offer and some of my coaches who I've trained. But also the body holds a lot of trauma, residual trauma, even years after a toxic relationship. So a great way to start working through that is to use osteopathy, because that releases a lot of trauma from the body, hypnotherapy, maybe energy healing. I know some of you might be a bit woo-woo, but that's actually quite a good way. And there are some amazing energy healers out there. And I've interviewed some of them on my podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness, for those of you that listen to those episodes. There's also tapping, thought field therapy, TFT. EMDR, which is about it's a great way for recovering from trauma. And it's so powerful. I mean, it just blew my mind when I went to try a session. And also nutritional advice, making sure what you're eating is giving your body the right energy that you need to stay strong during this. And again, it's about balance. It's not about being, perfect in any way. It's just about getting that balance. Now, for those of you that are interested to do more with me, I have just launched a brand new virtual retreat that's happening on the 12th to the 16th of July. Now, it's called How to Divorce an Abusive Partner and Recover from a Toxic Relationship. I'm going to be deep diving over 5 live webinars with me, so that I'm going to get really into the nuts and bolts of this. We're going to deep dive, we're going to do some exercises. You're going to get a workbook to work through as well. And then you're also going to get a copy of all the videos so you can refer back to it. Plus, you're also going to get breakout sessions where you can come on to a Zoom meeting where people are on camera if you want to do that, and meet other people going through similar situations, so you can form a support group to help you moving forward. So that becomes an invaluable, I mean, I've done so many retreats, and those groups of people who are going through similar things with you really become the best of friends. And I've got groups that are still in touch 8-9 years on that still meet up, and really strong friendships are formed because they really get what you're going through. So I am doing a really huge offer on this right now. So it's normally £497 sterling, and I'm giving it away at £297 at the moment. So £297, you're saving £200. If you are interested in coming on that live webinar with me, this is the only one I'm going to do with live webinars with me. After that, it will be a video-based program. So if you want to jump on and actually work with me, then the link for that is on my website, saradavison.com, or it's in the chat if you're on the Zoom with me, right at the top of the chat, it's on there. There are only about 6 or 7 places left because it's been out for a little while. So if you do want to jump on, then I recommend you jump on. There is a payment plan as well available at the moment, which is 2 payment plan, if that makes it a bit easier for you. So I just wanted to tell you about that because that is available, and you get to work with me, and we're going to deep dive and then do these breakout sessions as well. So do hang around, because I'm just going to finish up the presentation, and then I will be taking questions from you at the end and going through, so I know there's quite a few questions that have been asked. I wanted to finish with just this quote to hopefully help you keep strong. You may have the scars, physical or emotional, from a toxic relationship, but they do not have to define you, guys. This is where you start to take back your control, rediscover your identity, and create a future that you are truly excited to live. You can do it. You can do it. You know, I know because I've been there, and I know so many of my clients have been there too. And I know a lot of you listening are going through it right now too. So please know that there is a way through this. You can do it, and you are definitely not alone, and there is help available. So I'm going to now thank you all for being here, and I'm going to, let's go through some of these questions. Okie dokie. Do you have advice for co-parenting with a toxic ex-husband? Yes, I do. So if you are co-parenting, it's pretty much impossible to co-parent with a difficult ex-abusive partner. Because when co-parenting is based on working together, okay? Now, I understand that the family courts will encourage you to co-parent, but there is a lack of understanding in the family courts, unfortunately, still today, about domestic abuse, because there is no compulsory training on domestic abuse for any legal professionals, including family lawyers, barristers, and judges. So getting into the family court system can be very difficult if you are a victim of abuse, because they will, one, label it as high conflict rather than what it is, and 2, it's very hard to prove some types of abuse like coercive control. I mean, it's pretty much, I mean, I've had a judge say to me, sorry, it's impossible to prove coercive control, so how can it be a crime? But it is a crime in this country, but it's kind of ticking a box if you can't actually prove it, and there's no method to prove it in a family court. And also stating that you are a victim of abuse in the family court is known to backfire as well on you in lots of different ways. So when they recommend co-parenting, we really have to look at it for the actual practicalities, because if you haven't been in a relationship with a toxic partner, it's very hard to understand what that means. Because if they are hell-bent on annihilating you, then working together for the best interest of the children just doesn't come into it, because they're using the children for control, right? So how does that work? So parallel parenting is the way to go in most cases, because you can do that. What you can do is you can agree on the big picture, like schools, which again might be a challenge for some people as well. I know, because their ex is just never going to agree to what you want, or what you think is best for the child, just to be difficult, not for any other reason. So I think, parallel parenting is when you stop worrying about bedtimes and screen time and what they're eating and who they're spending time with, because you can't control those things. Okay, you just can't. With an amicable ex, or an ex that is healthy, you can talk about these things and come to agreements, and you both sort of stick to them out of respect for the other person. With this dynamic in a toxic relationship, that respect for the other person just doesn't exist. So you're on your own with that. So if you let them know what you want, the likelihood is they're going to do the complete opposite anyway, right? So it's about not you've got to pick your battles, the things that are super important for your kids. That's what you've got to make the decisions on. Kids are very, very resilient. They do learn to cope. And if it's safe for them to have a relationship with the other parent, then it's good that they do, because they have to find their own way. And quite often, having a parent who is like this is actually a really good learning curve for them, and a valuable life lesson to learn early on in life. And maybe they won't make the same mistakes that some of us made later on in life, because they'll have understood what this is like at that age. Difficult with kids to keep personal information to yourself. Yeah, I guess you've got to be careful what you say and do in front of the kids. But yeah. Joanna says yes to the horror show. And Andrew says the body keeps score. Basil van C. Kolk is a good book for trauma held in the body. Okay, let's look at some of these other. Can they change for a new partner? No. That's the simple answer. No, they can't change for a new partner. They are who they are, and they will go through the same process. Okay, so you'll be able to see this. You'll be able to see it. They will go through exactly the same process with the new partner. So the love bombing at the beginning, it's all amazing. And then the mask starts to slip once or twice, and then very, very often. So it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Obviously, the personality of the partner, again, will depend on the outcome. If it's a highly empathetic, healthy individual, then they're going to be on a hell of a ride. It's going to be awful for them, like it was for you. If they are slightly abusive, controlling themselves, they can feed off each other, and that becomes a very toxic mess. But it's not a happy relationship, and they don't suddenly become healthy again, like mentally. So no. What happens if they do not provide financial documents? Can proceedings proceed? Well, again, you're going to have to take legal advice, because I can't give legal advice, Angela, on that. But it's important to choose a lawyer that really gets this. And I mean really gets it. Some lawyers will say that they understand domestic abuse, but it's very hard for anyone to understand domestic abuse unless they've been through it themselves, or they have training. Some lawyers campaign. If you follow some lawyers on Twitter, you'll see if they're campaigning. Some lawyers do campaign a lot on these issues. They really get it, and other lawyers not so much. And that can be critical on your case. So make sure that you are going to a specialist in your field, for example. Yeah, and Angela said, I didn't realize that withdrawal of sexual contact could be considered sexual abuse. So interesting. Well, yeah, because quite often it's weaponized as to make you feel unattractive. So yeah, I mean, it can work both ways. Pretty horrendous. I know. Okay, guys. Well, if there's any other questions, let me know. But I just want to say thank you to you all. If you are going through this right now, then I know how difficult it can be. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. If you do want that extra support, please do reach out, contact me. My email address is sarah@sarahdavidson.com. sarah@sarahdavidson.com. My website is sarahdavidson.com. I'm on Instagram, Sarah Davidson Divorce Coach, Facebook. I train people to become coaches as well, so you can become a breakup and divorce coach. Quite often that's quite therapeutic. A lot of people have been through toxic relationships that want to help other people. So we do that too. If you'd like to join our community, we have an incredible global community of coaches learning to help other people and growing their businesses around the world. And as you can imagine, you've got to be pretty warm and friendly to do this job. So some amazing people in the community, and lots of learning with me, live webinars, interactive Zoom meetings, and events as well coming up. So yeah, really great to see you all. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your lovely comments as well that are coming in. It really has been an absolute pleasure and an honour. On behalf of myself and the Dash charity, I wish you all the very best. Mwah. Lots of love. Stay strong, and remember, you can do this.